You're listening to Trek FM.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of From There to Here, Trek FM's look at all 729 episodes of Star Trek, all 5 series, all the movies, including the animated series. I'm Nguyen, and with me here is Brandon-Shea Mutala. How you doing, Brendan?
I don't know about you, but I'm here to make some friends.
Ooh, those are. I feel like you got that line from somewhere. Oh, that line you got from our 2 episodes that we're going to review today. DS9 Season 3 opener, The Search Part 1 and The Search Part 2. And I love these 2 episodes. I really love them because it is such a good follow-up to the end of Season 2 with the Jem'Hadar, and it kind of inverts the premise of what we thought the Dominion would do now that we know they exist and we know they're hostile. It introduces the Defiant for the first time, which is a great, great opening scene to this episode where they're like, we're detecting a cloaked ship, and the cloaked ship is a Federation ship, and it's Cisco. And you talk about the Defiant. The Defiant is one of my favorite starships out of all the series. It is amazing that they introduced it here in Season 3, and just the whole premise of things don't seem quite right when they make contact with the Dominion and they start trying to have negotiations with them. Something seems a little off. But overall, it's a great inversion of what we come to expect, or what we expected from a Dominion reveal. So what are your thoughts on this, Brendan?
I think it's great that it's a 2-part episode, and we get the one reveal at the end of the first part of Odo's people, and then at the end of Part 2 we get the reveal that they're the leaders of the Dominion, because you weren't really expecting to find Odo's people so early on in the series. And I remember when Part 1 ended, I was literally just like, oh my goodness! Like, I couldn't believe it when those shapeshifters came out of the whatever. At the time, I thought it was water, and I was just like, holy smokes! I could not wait for the next week. You know, it was such an awesome reveal because Odo's been looking for his people, and we had the only real previous thing that we had was that necklace back in Season 1. You know, that. Which we never saw again. So, man, this episode was very important for me for sure. So I love this one a lot.
Exactly. You have the yearning from Odo, right, to go to the Amarian Nebula. You have Quark basically being co-opted by Cisco to come on this mission to make contact, because Quark, in a great pit of continuity, has revealed that the Ferengi Alliance has already begun to make some contacts with the Dominion through their third party, through the Karama in the Gamma Quadrant. So it makes sense, again, in this episode for Quark to be on this mission, and this is, again, a great use of him as adds levity when necessary, but also adds that outsider, non-Federation perspective. And then you have all the emotional impact of Odo and Kira on the Founder's planet, and him going through, just being home. And you really feel for Odo in terms of him being so glad to find himself at home, being able to transform into all these things. But yet, and the audience through Kira, you see Kira being happy for Odo. But as the episode progresses, you also kind of get a sense of something's not quite right here. We're not seeing the full picture, but we don't know what it is quite yet. And I think that, like you said, is a great bridge into the second episode. But the way it's structured in this episode, it's done really well, because I think you really get a sense that Odo's glad to be home when there's not quite yet an overwhelming sense of foreboding.
You got it. One of the things in the first part here that I love that's a character development, it's just a small thing for Cisco, is when he talks to Quark in his office, and Quark turns around and he slams that scepter of the Grand Nagus down. And he, like, planned this out, that on his way back he swung by Ferenginar. Like, what do you think the chances are of him convincing the Grand Nagus to lend him his scepter for this, right? For this thing. But the fact that Sisko thought of that, it says so much about him, because he understands the Ferengi culture, and he respects it, and he knows how to manipulate them based on their values, right? And it's a really neat little touch for Sisko that I love a lot. But one thing that I think was weird is the decision to leave Dax and O'Brien behind on that planet. It's unexpected, and that's the only part of it that I'm not sure how well it fits, because it's so different than they've always done in Star Trek, where they always go and rescue their crew, and they have this daring rescue mission. And I understand that it leads into, they all find out at the end of the second part that they're together in this shared consciousness or whatever program. But the fact that they left them behind feels like a weird decision to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, though. It is a little jarring, and you're kind of saying, well, what happened to them? And that's not typically what you would expect in an episode. You expect them to figure out a way to save them, right? And I think that was probably, if you were paying attention or you kind of understood how the rest of the series had been operating or progressed, that probably would have been your first red flag in terms of, is this really the scenario they're going with? Is this really what's going to happen? Like, they made the decision, cut your losses, abandon O'Brien and Dax there. And, you knew that there was going to be a part 2, but you didn't know how that part of the story would play into the rest of the two-parter. But it is interesting that, they just accepted the loss of O'Brien and Jadzia kind of right off the bat. But I think if you were watching it with kind of eagle eyes, you would have focused on that as the first red flag, as something's not quite right here.
See, but like that, they're still in reality there, bleeding into the second episode here, where they're not kidnapped and they're not prisoners of the Founders yet at this point. So later, it's kind of necessary for them to believe this fake scenario that's going on, right? While, oh, look, O'Brien and Dax are the ones who rescued us. Okay, we're safe. We've missed a bunch of stuff while we've been gone. But at that point, when they decided to leave O'Brien and Dax behind, they're still in reality at that point. So I don't know. It's just weird, and it's the one thing that I just think doesn't fit in the whole two-parter for myself.
So you would have them obviously get rescued or just not leave them behind, right?
Yeah, it's kind of necessary, because in the second part, when Sisko and Bashir, it's Bashir, right? In the thing with him, right? They're like, they open up the door and reveal that it's Dax and O'Brien, and it's like, okay, well, you've missed this while you've been gone. Lots of good things are happening, and so it's necessary for the second part, but it just feels so odd in the first part.
Right, exactly. So I think that goes back to what I was saying, is that without that part 2, it does seem a little jarring. It does seem you're not getting the full story, and I think this is a good place to transition into part 2. We'll talk about part 2 after the reveal of the female changing as part of Odo's people, and that we've discovered that. Then we find out that after the ship has been abandoned, their shuttle pod, Bashir and Sisko, get rescued by, lo and behold, O'Brien and Dax, and they said, "Hey, no worries, we got things solved. Starfleet knows everything. We got rescued. We're rescuing you." And I think that's when you start piecing in the pieces, saying, "Wait a minute, we missed a lot of backstory." It's almost it's deliberately exposition-y. It's deliberately they're info dumping you, and you're supposed to say, "Okay, I can buy into it." And initially, Sisko does buy into it, saying, "Oh, I guess I must have missed a lot. Starfleet's been negotiating with the Dominion," but it comes to a point in which the events are transpiring so fast and so quickly with such unintended or perhaps intended consequences that at some point even the audience acknowledges, wait a minute, what's going on here? And that's when Sisko and the rest of the crew realizes that something's afoot, something's not right.
Yeah. I think the second part is definitely quite a bit weaker than the first part because of the the fake scenario that's going on with Cisco and what's actually happening on Deep Space Nine is not actually happening. And so I don't think it holds up. And I know even watching it for the first time, I'm like, what is this? Like, this is just, I don't, like, you're supposed to think it's not right, but I think it's so wrong that it's just wrong. You know, the stuff with Odo and Kira on the Shapeshifters Rogue Planet there is good, but the stuff that's happening on Deep Space Nine in that dream is just, I just don't think it holds up, and I think it's the weakest part of the two parts.
So you don't like the fact that Eddington just basically allowed that Jem'Hadar to beat O'Brien, and like, yeah, not next time, get out of their way. Next time, get out of the way when they're trying to beat you.
Yeah, you should have just been here the whole time. Then you would have agreed. I mean,
exactly.
What are you guys doing abandoning Defiant?
Give them a wide berth, right?
Yeah.
But I do love the scene where Cisco barges in. And by the way, this is a great time to mention Admiral Nechayev, everyone's favorite quasi-admiral or quasi-antagonist, but sometimes is also good too. She has a great role here and fills in another great piece of continuity like Gulliver did in Tribunal in terms of, hey, we saw her in Next Generation. She's here too. And I think she does a really fantastic job playing off of Cisco too. Cisco's like, what the hell is going on here? And she says, Commander, pulls rank and says, you need to get out with the program. And I love that interaction where he barges in saying, what's going on? And then they kind of pull the rug out from you saying, we've already signed the agreement and you're getting promoted to captain. And, you know, I think that's the point in which you realize, like, this is definitely not right. And this is definitely something that is part of a larger plan that is, like we said, revealed to be just a Dominion simulation to see how far they could push the Federation until they would push back.
Yeah. So are you okay with that plot line? Like this weird...
You know, for the most part, I am. I get what you're saying, Brendan. I think a lot of other people said that sometimes they don't really believe what was going on, and they kind of called it from the get-go because the situations were so out of whack and they were so extreme, like wasn't subtle enough that you kind of believed it. It's almost like, this is clearly not right. What's going on here? And that the ending was telegraphed fairly obviously. I totally get that. I just think it was still well acted enough. And I just love the fact that, you know, they had that kind of mind game type thing going on, although it was fairly transparent. I give it a pass in a lot of ways, but I totally get what you're saying in terms of like not really buying it from the get-go. And if you don't buy it, then the reveal at the end doesn't have the same impact.
See, I compare it to another season 2 episode of Deep Space Nine, Whispers, you know, where people aren't acting right and the situation's not right. Like, that one was done well. That one was done really, really, really well. And this one, it just doesn't hold a candle to it, you know. And I think it's also with the fact that half the episode is fake and half the episode is real. And I think that's another reason why it doesn't quite fit for me, because half of it's in their dream in this shared continuity, and the other half is Kira and Odo living it up on the Founder's homeworld.
I actually like the fact that they blend that way, right? Where they actually discover the door that has why would they need a door, right, on this planet? And it shows that they were, you know, Cisco and the entire crew were there on the planet the entire time with Odo and Kira, excuse me. And I think that was a nice twist. I think the ending is very strong too, in terms of just shows you how bittersweet Odo's finding his people is, because he realizes that he found his people, but he also realizes that they're actually terrible and they're actually not very nice at all, and they're incredibly manipulative, and they are the Dominion, right? They are the antagonists. It's not merely just a misunderstanding. This is by design. This is by intention all along. They're the ones that have been orchestrating all of this. So I think that reveal at the end is so bittersweet for Odo, saying, I found my people, but at what price? At what cost?
And they're terrible at doing faces, just like Odo is.
Yes, they all adopt Odo face from here on out. That's true.
Anywho.
Which is actually very funny when you think about it, because I didn't realize that for the longest time, and then it clicked because I think someone mentioned it. I'm like, that is so true. Like, why wouldn't they be able to form normal faces? They all look like Odo for some reason, right?
See, Odo designed his hair after Dr. Mora.
Yeah.
right? They said back in season 2 there, and they all just look like him. I don't know. Because, spoilers for an episode coming up with Heart of Stone. Like, she can look exactly like Major Kira, right? So I don't know. Whatever. It's fine. Odo got knocked unconscious back in season 1 there with that key ring episode, so whatever. It's all good. Nothing's perfect. We mentioned him briefly, but we do got to mention Eddington because he's brought into the front here, and we'll see some wonderful things with him later on. And we got, we just mentioned her yesterday. We got Seska the Romulan.
Oh, that's right. Before we end this episode, we got to talk about how awesome. You're right, exactly right, Brendan. Torul is such a great part of this 2-part episode. Actually, thank you for mentioning that. Actually, because Martha Hackett, who plays Seska, who plays Torul here, does a terrific job, and it makes so much sense that if the Defiant has to borrow a cloaking device, the Romulans would be there to inspect it, make sure everything goes according to plan. And I really wish they would have continued having a character like Torul. Maybe she would have had to leave because of her obligations with Voyager, but having a Romulan presence on the Defiant full time, or at least more regularly, would have been a fantastic piece of dramatic tension. Because how are they going to play off with Starfleet? How are they going to play off when Worf joins the series? Spoiler alert, when he joins the series. Like, it is so good, and that they just drop it inexplicably, and it's just kind of a loss.
Yeah,
for me.
You just ruined my joke, Will. I was going to say, boy, I can't wait to see what happens with that Romulan over the next 4 years.
Oh, damn it.
Anyways, yeah, no, like Martha Hackett is really good. I really like her. I think she does a great job. She's a good actress, and I liked. Again, we got these powerful Romulan females. It continues that tradition of powerful Romulan women, and I like that a lot about them. Just like the Bajorans, all the Bajoran women that we meet are strong women, strong characters, and they're fun to watch. Kira, Ro, Kai Wynn, like all of these Bajoran women that we see are just very, very strong characters, and they're just a joy to watch. So, anywho, that's about all I got to say. Anything else you want to say on the search?
No, I think we pretty much covered it really well. I think for the most part, these are fairly strong episodes. I know it works for some people more than others, but I think overall this is a pretty solid start to season 3, and it's just a really good run of episodes for DS9 here.
Yeah, you got it.
So, Brendan, where can the audience find you on the internet?
Well, when I'm not in the Great Link, you can find me here on the network with new episodes of Melodic Treks, or you can find me on the Babel Conference or on Twitter at Brandon-Mutala. Where can people find you, Will?
They can find me on Twitter at Boomer9er, and you can find me in the Babel Conference, which is Trek FM's dedicated Facebook listeners group. So until next time, this does it for our edition of From There to Here. We'll see you next time.